The first-class cabin was quiet, polished, and wrapped in the kind of luxury that made people feel important the moment they stepped inside. Soft leather seats, hushed voices, glasses clinking gently. Then a sharp voice broke the calm. A white passenger leaned across the aisle, eyes narrowed, and looked directly at a black teenage girl seated alone. The comment wasn't shouted, but it didn't need to be. It was cutting, dismissive, and meant to embarrass her. Something about how she must be in the wrong section. Something about how first class wasn't for people like her. Passengers shifted uncomfortably. One pretended not to hear. Another glanced over, curious. The girl froze for a second, then straightened her back, choosing silence over confrontation. Her hands tightened in her lap, her face calm but clearly hurt. The woman smirked, mistaking that silence for weakness. But what she didn't realize no one in that moment realized was that this wasn't just a random teenager being insulted in first class. This was the daughter of the man who owned the jet. And the second the truth surfaced, the confidence in that cabin would evaporate. This isn't just a story about an insult on a plane. It's about assumptions people make when they think money, power, and privilege have a certain look. The girl in this story didn't arrive with an entourage. She wasn't loud. She didn't demand attention. She was raised to observe, to stay composed, and to let people reveal who they truly are. Her father, seated nearby, watched everything unfold in silence, not out of fear, but out of restraint. He wanted his daughter to see something important, how people behave when they believe there are no consequences. But as this flight continued, a single intervention, a quiet question, and one revelation would flip the entire dynamic of that cabin. By the time this jet reached cruising altitude, one passenger would be frozen in shock. Another would learn a lesson they would never forget. And everyone on board would be reminded of a simple truth: respect should never depend on who you think someone is. The private terminal felt more like a quiet hotel lobby than an airport. Soft lighting, glass walls, and staff who spoke in calm, practiced tones. A black teenage girl named Amaya walked in with a small carry-on and a book tucked under her arm. She wasn't loud, she wasn't showing off, just focused, collected. People glanced up, then back down, as if deciding whether she belonged. Behind her, a man in a simple jacket followed at an easy pace. Her father, Marcus. He looked like any tired parent traveling with a teen until. You noticed how the staff subtly stepped aside, and how one attendant nodded with extra respect. Amaya's eyes scanned the room and settled on the jet parked beyond the window, sleek, silver, and impossibly clean. She took a steady breath. This trip mattered. Her father had promised her a quiet weekend away after a tough school semester, a chance to reset. They approached the stairs, welcomed by a flight attendant who smiled warmly at Amaya and offered sparkling water. Amaya thanked her politely, then stepped into the first-class cabin, taking her seat by the window. She opened her book, hoping for peace, not knowing she was about to become the target of someone else's ego. The cabin filled slowly, each passenger carrying an invisible badge of entitlement. A white woman in an expensive coat entered with a loud sigh, scanning seats like she was checking her territory. She paused when she saw Amaya. Her eyes lingered too long. Then, with a tight smile that wasn't friendly, she leaned toward a nearby passenger and spoke just loud enough to travel. "Are they letting anyone sit up here now?" The words hit like ice water. Maya pretended not to hear, but her shoulders stiffened for a moment before she forced them to relax. The woman's voice continued, sharper now, aimed more directly. "Sweetie, I think you're in the wrong section. Economy is back there." A few people looked away. A man across the aisle shifted uncomfortably but stayed silent. Amaya slowly closed her book, calm on the outside, heat rising behind her eyes. She didn't want a scene. She didn't want to give the woman the satisfaction, so she replied politely, almost whispering, "I'm in my assigned seat." The woman scoffed, rolling her eyes as if Amaya's calmness was an insult. "Signed by who?" she muttered, louder now, letting the cabin hear her disbelief. The insult didn't stop. Never does when someone thinks they can get away with it. The woman adjusted her seat, turning her body toward Amaya like she was watching a show. "You know," she said, This is a private jet service. People pay real money for this. Amaya kept her voice steady. I understand. I should have ended it. But the woman smirked. Do you? Because you don't look like. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The implication hung in the air, ugly and loud. A flight attendant approached, sensing the tension. Everything okay here? She asked, eyes moving between them. The woman smiled sweetly. Oh, I'm fine. I'm just concerned this young lady may be lost. The attendant glanced at Amaya's boarding card and nodded. She's in the correct seat, ma'am. The woman's expression tightened. That can't be right. The attendant kept her professional tone. It is. The woman leaned back, but not in defeat, more like she was preparing a new attack. Amaya stared out the window, counting breaths. She wished her father would step in, but he stayed quiet a few rows back, watching carefully, not because he didn't. Care because he was measuring something deeper. Who would choose to do the right thing, even when it was uncomfortable? Cruising altitude brought no peace. The woman's comments turned from concern into open humiliation. When drinks were served, she laughed and said, "Make sure her card works," like Amaya was a gamble. A few passengers chuckled nervously. The kind of laugh people give when they don't want to become the next target. Amaya's cheeks warmed, but she didn't break. She spoke only when necessary. No thank you. I'm fine. Yes, please. Calm, controlled. The woman mistook that as permission. Where are your parents? She asked, loud again. Did someone bring you here as a charity thing? Maya finally turned her head and met her eyes. My father is on this flight, she said. The woman raised an eyebrow. Oh, and he's sitting back there too. The cabin went still. Phones appeared subtle at first, then less subtle. A young man angled his camera from behind a seat, catching the tension. The flight. Attendant returned, firmer now. Ma'am, I need you to lower your voice and remain respectful. The woman waved her hand dismissively. I'm just asking questions. Amaya's hands trembled slightly under her blanket, but she kept her face calm. She wasn't just protecting herself. She was protecting her dignity. And that quiet dignity made the woman angrier, as if Amaya's composure was proof she couldn't be controlled. That's when Marcus stood up. Not dramatically. Not with anger. Just calmly, like a parent stepping into a room where someone raised their voice at his child. He walked forward, stopping beside Amaya's seat. His presence changed the air steady. Grounded. Undeniable. Is there a problem here? He asked. The woman looked him up and down and gave a short laugh. Are you her dad? Marcus nodded. Yes. She shrugged as if that explained everything. Well, maybe you should teach her where she belongs. This is first class. Marcus didn't flinch. She's exactly where she belongs. The woman's smile hardened. Do you even know how this works? People like us pay for this level of service. Marcus glanced around the cabin, letting the silence speak. I know exactly how it works, he said quietly. The woman leaned forward, confident, smug. Then you'll understand why I don't want to sit next to you. This, she gestured vaguely like Amaya was an object. A few passengers gasped. The flight attendant stepped in again, voice tight. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you one last time, stop. The woman scoffed. Or what? You'll throw me off your little plane. Marcus's eyes stayed calm. No, he said softly. I won't, but your choices will. The flight attendant's face had shifted from discomfort to alarm. She excused herself quickly and moved toward the cockpit area, speaking into a headset. Marcus didn't move, rested a hand lightly on Amaya's shoulder assurance without making a scene. The woman watched the attendant leave and smirked. Calling security? Good. Minutes passed, thick and quiet. Then a second attendant appeared, looking pale, and whispered to the first. Eyes flickered toward Marcus. The pilot's voice came. Over the cabin intercom, unusually formal. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be making a brief operational pause. That wasn't normal. The woman's smirk faded a little. She sat up straighter, suddenly aware something had shifted.
The lead.
Attendant approached Marcus with careful respect. Mr. Hale, she said, using his last name precisely. We apologize for the disturbance. We're handling it now. The woman blinked. Mr. Hale? She repeated, like the name should mean something. The attendant nodded, still professional, but unmistakably serious. Yes, ma'am. The woman's eyes narrowed. Who is he? The attendant hesitated just a beat, then answered with the kind of truth that changes temperature in a room. He is the owner of this aircraft and the company operating this flight. Silence slammed into the cabin. The woman's face drained of color, and the sound of her confidence collapsed. The woman opened her mouth, then closed it, like her brain couldn't find the correct script. That's not possible, she whispered. Marcus didn't look triumphant. He didn't look angry. He looked tired in the way people get when they've seen the same disrespect too many times. The attendant stood firm. It is possible, and it is true. The woman's hands fidgeted with her bracelet.
What? I didn't know,
she said quickly, words tumbling. I mean, how would I know? She didn't. She glanced at Amaya like it was Amaya's fault for not announcing her status. Marcus spoke calmly. Didn't need to know who she was to treat her like a human being. The cabin stayed quiet, listening. The woman tried again, voice softer now. Sorry if I offended anyone. Marcus shook his head slightly. That's not an apology. That's damage control. A passenger who had been filming lowered their phone, suddenly embarrassed. The attendant asked the woman to step toward the back for a private conversation. The woman hesitated, then stood, moving stiffly. Her posture had changed completely. No more control, no more superiority. Only fear, as she walked away, eyes followed her not with admiration, but with judgment. Amaya stared forward, breathing steadily.
I'm Marcus.
Leaned closer to his daughter. Are you okay? He asked. She nodded once, swallowing hard. I'm okay, she whispered, but I shouldn't have to be this strong. The remainder of the flight felt different, not just quieter, but more honest. The cabin had witnessed something that couldn't be unseen. How quickly people assign value based on appearance. How quickly they panic when the truth interrupts their assumptions. Marcus sat beside Amaya now, not shielding her from the world, but standing with her inside it. A few passengers offered small, awkward apologies. One woman quietly said, "You handled that with grace," to Amaya, as if grace was something she had to earn. Amaya nodded politely, still tired. Marcus listened to the apologies without celebrating them. He wasn't interested in humiliation as payback. He was interested in learning as consequence. Before landing, the lead attendant returned and asked if Marcus wanted to file a formal complaint. Marcus looked at Amaya. What do you want? He asked her, giving her the choice. Amaya thought for a moment. I want her to remember this, she said. It's not because you own the jet, because I'm a person. Marcus nodded. He agreed to a report, not out of revenge, but to make sure the incident didn't vanish into silence. As the jet began its descent, Amaya looked out the window and finally exhaled. She didn't feel powerful because of wealth. She felt powerful because she stayed herself. Marcus knew the real victory wasn't that the woman froze it, was that his daughter learned. She never needed anyone's permission to belong.